President Muhammadu Buhari has broken his silence over the crisis rocking the national leadership of the ruling All Progressive Congress APC, saying Mai Mala Buni remains the interim national chairman of the party. In a two-page letter personally signed by him addressed to Governor Atiku Bagudu of Kebbi State, who is also the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, President Buhari pointed out that the multiplicity of cases currently rocking the party has the prospect of invalidating the activities and actions of the party by an independent National Electoral Commission. President Buhari said, and I quote, "The issue of leadership of the Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Committee, CECPC, should immediately return to status quo ante. Secondly, all members of the Governors Forum and their followers should desist from any behavior or utterance that will likely lead to disunity in the ranks of the party and ultimately jeopardize the transition to the convention. Third, the Mai Mala Buni-led CECC should accordingly be allowed to proceed with unnecessary preparation to hold the convention as planned unfailingly on the 26th of March 2022. End of quote. In a swift reaction, acting national chairman of the All Progressive Congress and Yobe State Governor Mai Mala Buni says he holds no grudge against anyone, including his governor colleagues who played different roles in the party while he was away on medical treatment abroad. Governor Buni, in an exclusive interview with Arise News while on his way to the airport to head back to Abuja, thanked President Muhammadu Buhari for restoring him to the position of acting APC national chairman while describing him as the father of the nation. Buni also says that the zoning agreement reached and announced by the APC in his absence stands, and he's returning to ensure a smooth and well-planned national convention. He said he's also glad to know that the party activities were properly conducted while he was away under the leadership of the governor, Abubakar Sani Bello of Niger State, who he described as my good brother. Well, an emergency meeting of the APC's National Executive Committee, NEC, slated for Thursday has been cancelled. A statement issued by the party's National Secretary and Caretaker Extraordinary Planning Convention Committee, John Akpanu Udo Dehe, said the cancellation was directed by the party's national chairman, Mai Mala Buni. A lot to unpack this morning.
Yes, but I think I'm going to start off by saying I really cannot stand these pictures, these London photo ops. I mean, the optics are lousy. I do wish politicians would stop it and stop it immediately. I think it's a thing of great embarrassment for this country that our president has to go abroad for medical trips. And I use the word has to, because he does have to, because our facilities here are not up to par, and that is highly regrettable. He does owe us that explanation, and he gave us that explanation that he's going for a medical checkup, but what we do not need is to rub insult to the injury by having these photo ops. And not just with President Buhari, you recall the other, jamboree with London photo ops. I don't like it. But so to start on that personal note and leave it there, I just think this is President Buhari trying to restore order to the party because it has been a complete mess. He has gone and done a complete 180-degree turn and has somewhat embarrassed Governors El-Rufai and Akeredolu, who went on some kind of premature victory lap with Governor El-Rufai talking on national television and declaring categorically, Buni is gone. Akpanu Dodehe, gone. Bello in charge, with backed by 19 governors. Buni will never be chairman of the party. Well, alas. And then Governor Akeredolu with the Yahoo, some kind of parting shot for the three. And, they're completely outnumbered. 19 governors and you three, randoms. But President Buhari has decided to really just stick to procedure. And I think when INEC raised that little red flag, he's right to have done that. Because whatever APC builds on a foundation that is not procedural, that is not backed by law, will collapse. So President Buhari has had to come back and take a different position on this issue. And I think it's probably the wisest thing to have done. So all roads are now leading to March 26th. But the embarrassment remains. The stench of disunity does linger on in the ruling party. And I don't want to, PDP has their own problems, of course, which we'll be discussing later with our guests, but it's a false equivalence to compare the two. APC is the ruling party. And if we're having this chaos on the political end, you can bet that it's a distraction on the governance end, which is why we are dealing with all we are dealing with. We don't need to list the litany, as President Buhari, using his word in his letter, of difficulties Nigerians are facing right now. No power, fuel, diesel, just skyrocketing prices. The country is on its knees. And this does not help instill confidence that the matter is being handled adequately with all these sideshows and political shenanigans. I think it's a complete embarrassment. So the only way to redeem themselves, this is APC as a party, is to have a smooth, successful convention. And I hope that they do.
Well, I don't think this is the end of the story. And there is a lot more that we need to investigate and know. When the president traveled abroad, a faction of the party said the president had given directives that Buni should step down. The office of the Attorney General said, no, procedure must be followed. And that procedure is that for Buni to step down, that decision will have to be taken by the National Executive Committee of the party, and a 7-day notice would have to be given to Mai Mala Buni for him to be able to defend himself. Those procedures were not followed. In other words, if indeed it was true that the president was the one that gave the order that Mai Mala Buni should step down as chairman of the Extraordinary Convention Organizing Committee, then something went wrong there, because that's an issue that has not been addressed either by the president or by the official machinery in the presidency. Then I next stepped into the matter and said, Sani Bello, governor of Niger State, could not just take over the party without 21 days notification to INEC. And INEC stated the rules. At paragraph 3, about the guidelines. At paragraph 4, about what the Electoral Act says about how political parties can organize either their own conventions or even meetings of the NEC. And then in the course of all of that, we now found the president doing a 360 degrees. And that 360 degrees, oh, well, if you say 180, well, maybe there may still be other developments, but it looks like almost 360 degrees. Because from the president being quoted as having sacked Buni as leader of the party, the president has now written a letter to provide clarification. And I think that clarification is important. The president of the party is the, the leader of the party. And what he's now saying, and the letter is instructively directed to the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum, which is like telling Senator Atiku Bagudu of Kebbi State, tell your colleagues, this is where I stand in this matter. And the president is expressing concern about controversies and uncertainties within the ruling party, which could lead to an implosion of the party, which could lead to the APC ending up the way the PDP ended up in 2015. The president also opposed the decision, the position of the Independent National Electoral Commission in the matter, and then says, look, Buni is the only person who can chair or organize the NEC meeting or even the convention that will take place on March 26. What we have seen overnight is that even the NEC meeting, as proposed, in line with the position of the Independent Electoral Commission, has now been postponed. Okay? So this is a party that is in turmoil, a party that even the leader says is likely to face an implosion. And you have President Muhammadu Buhari at this point, whatever other questions we may raise, trying to justify the moral challenge that he himself faces. That the party that brought him to power, yesterday I used the expression, the ladder that he climbed to power, is not destroyed, after him. Yes, his own faction of the party, the CPC, the AMPP faction of the party, they may have achieved their objective of gaining power, but do they have the right to also destroy that structure immediately their own man has spent 8 years? What is likely to happen? Which is the point about the implosion that the president alluded to, is that you may have if certain forces in the party are not allowed to have their way with regard to 2023 nomination process, pulling out. And the most dominant, the most aggressive faction in that arrangement at the moment seems to me to be the Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu faction. Because in the last 48 hours, it is clear that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, appears not to be joking about his interest in the presidency of Nigeria. And he has kept himself ahead by way of appearance and strategy. Now he has said he wants to meet with the Senate caucus of the party, and he's saying he has the competence, he has the capacity to be able to lead the party to the future. Now, if his faction is as determined as it appears to be, then what will happen at the end of the day is that, look, that could have very serious consequences for the future of the All Progressives Congress. So even with the leader of the party, the president of Nigeria, applying what looks like a stick approach and laying down certain rules, I don't think we have seen the end of this drama. What will determine the end game will be the determination of the contesting other factions, where the people who are leading the other factions, I don't think they are as strong as Tinubu. So how is it going to play out? What is going to happen at the end of the day remains to be seen. March 26 will soon be here, and the aftermath will also be something that we'll be looking at for purposes of analysis.
So for me, two illustrations. I want to go straight this morning. The Yahoo boys seem to be winning. The question is, who is now the MAGA in this game? MAGA is a street term for the person that has been pawned or cheated, by the fraudster. So the Yahoo boy camp or the Yahoo governor's camp have won this fight. Mai Mala Buni found his way to London at first after denial that, I wasn't going to London to see President Buhari. Finally found his way in London. And President Buhari, put his foot on the ground in all of this conversation. Because like I said yesterday, the president not putting his foot on the ground will be the albatross of this party. So common sense and reason has prevailed. He's put his foot on the ground. Mai Mala Buni can now return to Nigeria, well on his way back to Nigeria, to be able to take his place. The question is, will this last? No, it will not last. It's just a matter of time. Like I said yesterday, centripetal and centrifugal forces. It's like the game theory. These guys are trying to, equal each other out. Nash equilibrium, full throttle. What I posit will happen is, after the convention, if it holds, after the convention, there's going to be a big and robust backlash at all of this. And people will now bring out their knives, ready to wield it big. Dr. Abati talked about Tinubu. He did meet with the caucus yesterday, and the support was overwhelming. He met with them. Femi Gbajabiamila was there. Other top stakeholders were there from the House of Reps. And the support, in fact, the refrain was, on your mandate, we shall stand. That's to show you that there's a level of support going on. So other parties, the group of the 19 governors, try to, balance this out. I'm sure they are watching. But the real knife, most people will start to bring their knife out after the 26th. Because what might start the self-immolation, what might start people burning up themselves, will be the primaries, the presidential primaries. And it's going to be a very dirty fight. So I'll say, please hold tight to your popcorn. In fact, get a refill and get some good drink and watch, because this has just started. Thank you. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rhodes Zodiri, Adesu Amora, and Aaron Akejola to give us updates on Africa business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us. All right, for updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adesu Amora is here with us. Adesu, great to have you.
Good morning, Rufai. Great to be here. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Dr. Abati.
Morning.
Morning. Morning.
Well, the number of coronavirus deaths reported worldwide fell by 17% in the last week Meanwhile, the COVID-19 infections rose by 8%, reversing a decline that we've been witnessing since January this year. There's been a decline of coronavirus cases. However, in the last 7 days, there's been an 8% increase. The world recorded 43,000 deaths and 11 million new infections in the last 7 days. I will tell you where those cases are rising in a moment. But first, let's look at the vaccination numbers in Nigeria. A quick reminder that the Nigerian government has said there will no longer be daily COVID-19 infections and deaths numbers released. However, this will now be published on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So those vaccination numbers across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja, that's the spreadsheets there. But the NPHCDA says that Rivers State has now joined the ranks of states that have partially vaccinated at least 10% of their eligible population, and over 3.3 million eligible persons are partially vaccinated in Jigawa State. Jigawa and Kano states have each fully vaccinated over 1.2 million eligible persons. We recall that Lagos is also on the list of those states that have vaccinated fully over 1 million persons. Nigeria is looking to vaccinate 70% of its population. Now, those numbers, let's look at where they're rising. The WHO says that the biggest jump were recorded in the Western Pacific as well as the Africa regions. Now, the head of the WHO, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, said these increases are occurring despite reductions in testing in some countries, and he describes the situation as a tip of the iceberg. He adds that a combination of factors was causing the increases, including the highly transmissible Omicron variant and its cousin, the BA2 subvariant, as well as the lifting of public health and social measures. Infections rose by 29% in the Western Pacific. Africa saw a 12% rise in new cases and 14% rise in deaths. In Europe, cases also inched up by about 2%. Again, the WHO is saying the watchful word should be caution, as a lot of countries are lifting their remaining curbs against this virus. To another story, the WHO's evaluation of Russia's Sputnik V corona vaccine has suffered a setback. The health agency says this is due to what it calls an evil situation. They had originally scheduled a visit to Russia on March 7th to assess the facilities where this vaccine is being produced, but the inspection and assessment have been affected by the invasion of Ukraine. They say booking flights has become very difficult, and there have also been issues with credit cards and some operational issues. The WHO, as you know, has been evaluating the Sputnik V vaccine for an emergency use authorization since last year. However, there's always one thing or the other. Now, it's the problem with the invasion of Ukraine. And finally, Israel has detected cases of a new COVID-19 variant. It's the hybrid of the Delta and Omicron variant, we are told. But this is not the first time we are seeing what has now been dubbed as the Delta Cron. We've also recalled that in Cyprus, some cases were detected earlier on, late last year actually, but now Israel is saying they can't confirm that we have a recombination of a variant called the Delta Cron. Back to you guys.
Do I go first?
Sure.
Okay, quickly. The fact that the WHO has postponed its scheduled visit to Russia to take a second look at Sputnik 5 for purposes of assessment is understandable. There are issues there in Russia, uneven situation. Everybody is keeping away from Russia. Even to book flights is a problem. Operational issues will be a major challenge. And in spite of all of that, even credit card payment systems have been disrupted in Russia. So it therefore makes sense that the WHO is saying the planned assessment trip to Moscow will have to be postponed. And it has spoken to the health authorities in Moscow, And what we're told is that new dates will be set as soon as possible. I think all of that makes sense in the context of the war, the conflict, if you like, between Russia and Ukraine. Now, as for the WHO again saying, look, we should be more concerned about the fact that cases are rising. Okay, that's a no-brainer. It makes sense. What has happened is that many parts of the world, even in the, in Europe, in the United States, they've tried to relax, measures. But the truth of the matter that the WHO is trying to put across is that we should not get to a situation where we think that COVID-19 has disappeared. We just have to avoid thinking that COVID-19 is no longer here. Take South Korea, because you talked about the Western Pacific. This morning alone, South Korea has recorded over 600,000 cases and up to about 62 deaths, arising from the fact that South Korea, has relaxed, measures. Now, Friday, tomorrow, the health authorities in South Korea, they are going to meet to determine whether these restrictions, certain levels of restrictions, should be imposed and whether a decision should be taken that not more than 6 persons should meet at any particular time. There are also fears that apart from the Western Pacific, where the infection rate has gone up in the last week, even earlier, to about 25%. The accurate figure is 25%. In Africa by about 12%. In Europe by about 2%. Now, even in Europe, where there has been an increase of about 2%, there are concerns about, what could happen eventually because it's uneven. The spread is uneven, and it's the Omicron variant, it's the BA2 variant, and researchers are saying, well, maybe it's not so serious yet. But nobody knows what can happen tomorrow. That's what WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus is saying. And he's saying that what it means is that all of us just have to remain vigilant, either as individuals or as health institutions across the world. In Israel, yes, the recombinant variant of Delta, a combination of Delta and Omicron. Before now, researchers have said that recombinant development was possible. What has now been confirmed is that, in fact, it exists. But the only silver lining there, to borrow a phrase from Tundu Abiola, is that, look, they say that it's not a very serious problem here because it hasn't developed into any form of crisis in some other, parts of the world. But that there can be a possible recombination. There could be another variant of the virus. Should be a wake-up call. And I think, the scientists, in staying ahead of the research and bringing up these revelations, will seem to be doing a great service to the whole of humanity.
Right. Thank you for that, Dr. Abati. And I did jump on that silver lining that it does not appear that it's going to be like Omicron and really upend all the good work that's been done so far. But we had been warned, hadn't we, Adeswa? But I think it was a British report that said that we can expect a new variant every 6 months. But that those new variants might not necessarily be such a problem the way Omicron was. So I guess that's, on par. But what's your take, Adeswa, on this call in the US for a 4th booster jab based on the small study in Israel? Do you think that we're all going to have a 4th jab?
Well, Tunde, I can tell you for free that it's going to be somewhat difficult for health authorities across the world to implement a 4th jab. At the moment, it's even difficult to get people to get their 2nd doses for 2 regimen vaccines. However, following the sciences, you recall that the Pfizer CEO has been talking about this for a while now, and it's based on studies that they have done. They say a 4th dose or a 2nd booster would be necessary to help to prevent infections. At the moment, most of the vaccines we have do not prevent infections. They only help to prevent severe diseases and try to help to stop fatalities, to try to stop deaths. But the Pfizer CEO has said repeatedly that, we are working on specific vaccines, and these boosters, we're getting to a place where we can see them actually help to prevent infections. And so maybe if you go with that narrative, perhaps some countries and some people may buy into it, but it's going to be a very hard sell because, as you can tell, around the world, people seem to be tired of COVID, even though the virus is not tired of the human population just yet.
Thank you so much, Adeswa. Now, our dependable Rosa Sadiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rosa.
Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah, the President Buhari is apologizing to Nigerians with respect to power outages, high fuel costs. Put out a statement through his spokesman, Garba Shehu, saying that, fuel queues have been reducing a bit and the government is on top of that matter. And as far as electricity, well, they're also working on that too. It's interesting that the NERC, the Electricity Regulatory Commission, has come out to say that the electricity supply issues that we're seeing is as a result of vandalism on gas infrastructure. So if you look at the reports that Benny Ark put out yesterday, our correspondent in Abuja, on what's been going on with, Genco saying that the reason why power supply is erratic is because they're owed 1.6 trillion naira since 2013 or so, and then NBET's bulk electricity trading body coming and saying, no, that's not true. Now you got NERC coming out and saying that it's vandalism that is causing things. So you've got all these chess pieces saying that this is one reason or the other why things. But the vandalism angle, I mean, if you look at what's happening with our production issues with oil and gas, I am actually leaning towards that because that is one of the, it's at an all-time high and it's really affecting a number of things. We move to Kenya. Kenya's National Oil Corporation is intervening in in LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, as a result of, for a number of reasons. One, crude oil has, of course, been rising and it's impacting a whole number of other energy derivatives. They have also instituted value-added tax on cooking gas in Kenya, so that's also adding pressure to prices. And then in the power independent dealers that bring it into the country, they're also looking for higher margins. So you put all that together, and that's causing cooking gas prices to reach an all-time high. I think a 13-kilogram cylinder is now at 3,400 shillings, up from about 2,250 late last year. So there's been a significant increase. But there's something to be said here about Kenya's strategic decision to intervene in various markets in order to cushion the impact on the average Kenyan. Cooking gas is one. Another one is electricity. They announced, I think it was late last year, Uhuru Kenyatta, and by the way, before I say all this, there is an election this year, so if you want to get cynical about these decisions, you're forgiven for doing so. But he announced at the end of late last year that there will be a 30% cut in electricity tariffs for the average Kenyan. He said there will be a 15% cut in Q4 2021 and another 15% cut in Q1 2022. The 15% cut was applied late last year, and it brought down what the average Kenyan was paying for power. For the second 15% cut, the IPPs, independent power providers in Kenya, pushed back. They said, hey, look, you can't do this. We've invested so much money in the power sector. You can't just unilaterally announce that you're going to reduce prices. And to be honest, as much as Kenya respects free markets, they do have a tendency to just make this announcement. I don't know if anyone remembers when they tried to cap interest rates on banks, that banks could apply to customers. That was a spectacular failure. So Kenya then came back and said, okay, you know what, we're going to do the 15% Q4. But for this Q1 2022 15% reduction, we'll review our the PPAs, power purchase agreements with the IPPs, and work something out. But there was still a reduction. You move to fuel. Also, they decided to start subsidizing fuel about 4 months ago. And that is as a result of the trajectory of oil prices. They are able to do this because there is VAT on fuel, there are a number of taxes. I was looking at the template. I think there is even a levy for foreign exchange to account for the amounts that's brought in and imported. So there's all types of taxes that go into their fuel costs in Kenya. That is now put away into a fund. And it is from that fund that the Treasury is now being able to cover the costs of, to subsidize the cost of fuel for Kenyans. But it's only been going on for about 4 months. So you look at the intervention in LPG. You look at the intervention in electricity. You look at the intervention in fuel. What is the outcome of these policy decisions, this particular decision to subsidize at this time? Inflation. If you take a look at the most recent figures, look at the chart there. Kenya's latest inflation numbers for February are at a 12-month low. The last bar to the right of your screen, 5.08%. If you compare February 2022 to February of 2021, it was 5.7. This is the lowest it has been for the past 12 months. Why? Because the average Kenyan is paying less for tariffs, electricity, paying less for fuel, and that has now fed through, and as far as the inflation, the CPI basket is concerned, it is reduced. So if you compare, I was going to do a comparison with Nigerian inflation. I didn't want to trigger people. There's a guy on Twitter, every time I compare Nigeria to another country, he goes ballistic. So I just decided not to, let me just leave that alone. But if you think of here, where Zainab Ahmed said that in a conference call with the IMF, that Nigeria had quietly removed the electricity tariffs and that they were now facing fuel, what has been the impact? The arguments that we continue to make here that subsidies are supposed to be protecting the poor is not reflected in the numbers. It's just not there. So this is, I think even France has announced that they're giving subsidies for energy prices. So if you want to look at how to deploy subsidies to impact your people, to cushion them from high prices, that's what Kenya is doing. Anyway, still, Kenya Airways, on the flip side, not all decisions in Kenya are good, but they've decided to briefly cut salaries because the money they were expecting from the treasury, I think it's about 20 billion shillings, hasn't come yet. So CEO of Kenya Airways, Alan Kilavuka, said that until the money hits the accounts, they're going to have to reduce costs. So for now, they've cut salaries for workers of Kenya Airways until that bailout comes from the treasury. And then finally, Eskom. Eskom is forecasting that the cost of diesel-powered turbines is going to be about $1.4 billion extra over the next 12 months. You will be forgiven for thinking that this headline has something to do with the recent rise in diesel around the world. It has nothing to do with it. It just shows you how terrible the timing is. They made a presentation to the National Economic Development and Labour Council in South Africa, which represents unions and business interests and so on and so forth. And in the presentation, they said that because of the failure of their coal-powered plants, which, according to the presentation, at any given time, one-third of power can be, one-third of the capacity can be lost. That's how bad it is. This is a 3-hour show. Think about losing one-third of this, or think about losing one-third of your salary, or think about losing one-third of anything in a quantitative respect. So it's big. And so they said that, okay, because the coal-powered plants are failing and can be destabilized at any time, they've got to turn to diesel turbines, and the cost of the diesel turbines of trying to fuel them and to keep them going to make up for the coal power plants failing is where they're getting this $1.4 billion cost. But they didn't disclose the cost of diesel that's being as an input. Yeah. So you can imagine what that cost would be now with where diesel is. And just another point, you know, Cape Town recently said that they were going to switch to renewable energy because of this. Cape Town is a population of 4.4 million people. Their capacity is about 1,800 megawatts, which is about 40% of the 4,000 megawatts here. So a city of 4 million people is using almost 40% of the energy of another country of 200 million.
I mean, that just shows you. But I mean, one thing I'll pick out of that story is, number one, Eskom, South Africa, one of the most industrialized nations, is using coal.
Right.
Why can't we use coal here? Because South Africa can use coal to drive a lot of that industrialization because it's cheap energy. I mean, if you're using fossil fuel, you either use coal or gas.
Right.
Our problem here is that we have gas, but there's been vandalization and theft of the gas. And even when you load up power from this gas power station like Azura and the lights, and you load them up on the grid can't take it.
Right.
And you have some government officials coming out to defend the fact that, oh, we've just had only 2 grid failures this year.
Yeah.
You know, formerly we used to have well over 30 grid failures. The government has done so much. We've limited it just to 2.
Right, but then...
I mean, when you get excuses like this, you're wondering what is happening. And concerning Kenya and the subsidies, Rotus, we all know our problems in this country. If you put that tax aside, people will eat the money.
Yeah.
We've tried something like that now.
Right.
You remember the subsidy reinvestment program? It's of some that sort. Have a pool, you know, where you can reinvest the money and all of that. You pull out subsidies and things like that. The question is, what happens in the end?
Right.
So they might have some level of fiscal discipline. And it goes back to the people that run, you know, the government. Kenya has its own problems.
Oh, yes.
But there's still some modicum of fiscal discipline. You know what we do here? We're at the height of fiscal recklessness.
And it shows.
And it shows. And that's why you see that we'll borrow Eurobond, and we take that Eurobond to subsidize. That's the height of fiscal recklessness. And that has always been the problem. And that's why you see we can't build a refinery, but we've paid trillions in subsidies over the years.
Maintenance.
And turnaround. How about taking that money to build a refinery?
Right.
But we're at the height of fiscal recklessness. We're reckless. We're reckless in this country.
Okay, Kenya. Let me start with Kenya. I know you like Kenya.
I might move, Doctor. I might move. I'll do the Kenya business update from Nairobi. I know we have Arises in Nairobi.
And I always ask the questions, what lessons we learn from Kenya?
Yeah.
But I do not think that Kenya in any way is better than Nigeria. In fact, the problems they have, just as serious as the problems we have in Nigeria.
Doctor,
what are these problems? No, let me concentrate on Kenya.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kenya power.
Okay.
Right? In Kenya, they also have disruptions in electricity supply. Kenya also put in place a Kenya electricity sector reform, which is like that of Nigeria. It has not worked. Okay, the people of Kenya, you talked about subsidy. Yes, they are also complaining about that subsidy, how it is not translating, to the ordinary man. The same concern that you have with regard to Nigeria. Kenya Power is one of the most inefficient institutions in Kenya today. Now, what is Kenya Power now trying to do? Kenya Power is trying to diversify, to compete with Safaricom, with Wananchi, and with some of the, other alternatives that you talked about. They want to go into even communications, right? To do telecom services, because Kenya Power has fiber optic cables that have been making available. Okay, if you think there's any lesson from there, is this something that can be done in Nigeria by in the power sector, that diversification, which is a basic thing in business. The other thing is that Kenya has been looking at solar energy and trying to invest in that. Okay, is Nigeria thinking in that direction? But to think that the average Kenyan is better off than the average Nigerian in terms of electricity supply, I may not immediately agree with you. The second thing, the biggest thing, challenge that they have in Kenya now is politics. And all of that is going to determine what happens with Kenya Airways and what happens with Kenya Power or other institutions in Kenya. With Raila Odinga having been endorsed by Uhuru Kenyatta, who is fighting his deputy president, Williams Ruto. Williams Ruto goes about in one direction, Kenyatta is in another direction, and Raila Odinga, 77-year-old Raila Odinga, former prime minister, is being campaigned for by the ruling party. We have two dynasties coming together. That in itself is a more urgent problem for Kenyans. Who takes over next? And what will be the implications for, institutions in Kenya? So that we do not have the kind of situation we had in the past in Kenya, where there was a blowout, serious violence. So the stability of Kenya is in itself a problem. Okay, here in Nigeria, we find ourselves in a similar situation. And we are preparing for another major general election like the Kenyans. Okay, you say the president of Nigeria has sent out an apology through Garuba Show. Well, doesn't you and I and the people of Nigeria an apology?
Yeah,
because during the campaign,
fix it.
During the campaign in 2014, 2015, I said it yesterday. We were told that, look, get this Jonathan out of the place. In 6 months, you will have electricity. You will have what? Okay, how many years later? That problem has not been solved.
Nope.
So the president, I see it as a sign of humility to say, well, I promise you people, but I'm sorry, this thing has not happened, then we will sort it out. Would they be able to sort it out? GMD and MPC has come to the rescue to say, look, we have 1.7 billion liters. We have another 2.5 billion liters. Well, if you look at the stations, it looks like the problem is beginning to ease. I didn't have to sleep at the fuel station, to move around in the last 2 days. Okay, so some effort is being made. What we just need is for the problem to be solved. And for Nigeria not to have to take $2.2 billion out of the Eurobond of $4.4 billion to further fund subsidy, when there are other alternatives that we can think about. The Kenyans, as problematic as their own country is, they are thinking of solar. They are moving in that direction. They even want to turn the major electricity company into a phone distribution company. Okay, can we just think out of the box so it is possible? As for whether Nigerians will accept the president's apology or not, it's a different matter entirely. But it shows humility for the president of Nigeria to say, we goofed, but we will sort it out.
Do you accept the
Right.
apology, Dr. Abati?
Do you accept the apology?
I
accept the
accept
apology?
the apology,
Yeah,
but the
okay.
best apology is change behavior. But there was a part in that apology that really did raise eyebrows. He referred to seasonal issues. We need to stop that rainy season reference. Once and for all, it must never be spoken of in public again. That's the only part that I'll quibble with. But with regards to the apology, that's fine. But then we need progress. That's what we really need.
And we need to see it
Okay.
in the numbers.
And I want to teach you a lesson in indifference. I'm going to share with you.
Oh, okay.
My inability to care about others' opinions. Unless you're my friend or you're my family, I couldn't care less. I will teach you my ways.
Yeah, I will learn it. I will take it.
Trust me, you don't want to learn it.